All right, let's talk about September 19th, 2025. This was the day the entire landscape for skilled professionals trying to work in the US just completely changed. We're not talking about a small tweak here. This was a massive overhaul of the H1B visa program, and it's got huge implications for tech, for healthcare, really the whole American economy. And it all boils down to one single staggering number. $100,000. Yeah, you heard that right. That's the new annual fee an employer has to cough up for one single H-1B worker. Now, this isn't just some administrative cost. It's a gatekeeper, a number so high it's literally reshaping the entire foundation of skilled immigration into the U.S. So what's really going on here? Well, this policy, it isn't just about jacking up a fee. Nope. It's a complete redesign of who gets a shot to work in America and how companies can even hire them. We're talking about a seismic shift, moving away from a system that was basically based on chance to one that's all about cost. So to really get our heads around this thing, we're going to break it down into the four main parts of this overhaul. First, that absolutely massive annual fee. Then we'll talk about how the old lottery system got completely replaced. After that, the new, much higher salary requirements. And finally, the much, much tougher scrutiny that employers themselves are now under. Okay, let's start with that massive fee, the $100,000 price tag. I mean, it's the headline grabber for a reason, right? Because it completely changes the entire economic equation of hiring international talent. So here's how it works, and it's pretty simple and, frankly, brutal. For every single new H-1B application, the employer has to pay $100,000. And get this, it reportedly applies for all 6 years of sponsorship. This is all on the employer, which, immediately brings up a huge question. Who can actually afford to do this? And believe it or not, it gets even more complicated. The old random lottery system, it's gone. Finished. In its place, we now have a wage-based selection process. So it's not about luck anymore. It's just about money. The jobs with the highest salaries, they get picked first. This whole thing just fundamentally favors senior, high-earning roles and pretty much slams the door on junior and even mid-level talent. Now check this out, because this is where you really see the unevenness of it all. For a giant corporation, $100,000 is, what, a rounding error? It's less than 0.1% of their revenue. But for a startup, that same fee could be 10, maybe even 20% of their entire annual revenue. That's not a hurdle, you guys. That's a brick wall. Okay, so we've talked about the companies. Let's switch gears now and look at this from the perspective of an individual worker. Because all these changes create what is basically a high-stakes obstacle course. The ripple effects of that fee create a whole new and much tougher reality for any skilled professional. So the first and most obvious thing that happens, the job market just shrinks. I mean, think about it. If only the biggest, wealthiest companies can even afford to pay for sponsorship, the total number of H-1B eligible jobs is just going to plummet. And when I say plummet, how much are we talking? Well, analysts are estimating this policy could slash the number of work visas by 5,500 per month. That is huge. It creates this hyper-competitive pressure cooker environment for the very few sponsored jobs that are even left. And at the same time, the bar to even get in the door gets raised way higher. Remember, selection is now based on who's got the highest salary. So, a lot of those junior and mid-level roles in tech and healthcare, the ones that used to be a common way to get a foot in the door in the US, they're now pretty much disqualified from H-1B sponsorship. Okay, but what happens if you're already here? You're in the US on an H-1B and you get laid off. This is where the pressure becomes almost unbearable. A clock starts ticking and, trust me, it's ticking a whole lot faster than it used to. And this right here just perfectly illustrates that new reality. The grace period you have to find a new job. And remember, a new employer who's willing and able to pay that $100,000 fee has been cut in half. It went from 60 days all the way down to just 30. For a lot of people, that's just an impossible deadline. So here's the really crucial point. These individual struggles, they don't just happen in a vacuum, right? They all add up, they scale, and they create these massive waves across the entire US economy, hitting some key industries really hard. So no surprise here, the tech industry is getting hit the hardest. It accounts for almost half of the impact. But look at this, consulting and healthcare are also facing major disruptions. And for healthcare, this could be really bad, maybe even making doctor and nurse shortages worse in places that are already desperate for them. There's a quote from the analysis that I think just cuts right to the heart of the economic argument here. It says the policy explicitly advantages large corporations while effectively excluding most small businesses and startups from accessing international talent. So this isn't just about who gets a visa, it's about the entire market. It's creating a system that directly helps the biggest players while locking out the smaller innovators. And when you look at the long term, the risks are pretty significant. You're talking about potentially stifling American innovation in really critical fields like AI. You could see a talent drain where skilled people only go to a few major tech hubs. And according to the analysis, this might not even do what some people think it will. It might not raise wages for domestic workers. Instead, companies might just decide to offshore the work or, just automate it. So, given this incredibly difficult new landscape, what are aspiring workers even supposed to do? What's the new playbook? Let's take a look at the alternative paths and the new strategies that people are now being forced to figure out. While that old path of coming to the US early in your career, it's basically gone. The new quote-unquote unofficial pathway looks something like this. First, you have to rack up 10 plus years of senior level experience in another country. Then you can only really target the huge corporations in major US tech hubs. You might have to explore these really niche alternative visas, like the O1 for extraordinary ability or the L1 for intracompany transfers. It just makes the American dream a much longer, way more difficult, and way more exclusive journey. And all of this brings us to the central question, the big debate that this whole policy kicks off. Is this new system really protecting American jobs by prioritizing the highest skilled, highest paid workers? Or is its main effect just building a giant wall around the American talent pool that only the biggest and richest corporations have the money to climb over? It's a debate about economics, it's a debate about innovation, and really, it's a debate about the very definition of the American dream in the 21st century.